Welcome to Whisperwood Stories, and happy Halloween. Today we read a story that I have written not only for Halloween, but for 100 subs. Thank you everyone who has stuck with me this long and given me the opportunity to narrate scary stories for you. Thank you. But without further ado, let's begin the special story by Whisperwoods. Death Below, Part 1. It was only when I sat on the plane that I thought about the whole case. Our new job. I stared at the flash drive in my hand, wondering if I should check its contents. It had been given to me by someone in the office just after we'd been assigned this job. For all I knew, it was just some virus. The man had rushed me in headquarters, mumbling, forcing the drive into my pocket. "It's not too late. Run while you can. They'll send you where they want to get." Then was even the weirder part. He was dragged away by security. I only caught a glimpse of the man's badge. Perhaps it was the name that stopped me from handing over the flash drive too. Miles West, the name tag read. I had the feeling that if security had seen the man hand me this flash drive, they would have taken it too. As far as I know, no one in the company has seen Miles again. So I was put with a new team, designated the Delta Squad. We had been tasked by HQ to harvest artifacts, stone samples, and so on from a private underwater cave system in Italy. And we were on our way there. My new team is Allison West, Riley Arnold, Jared Parker, and myself, Alex Erndell. We had been given a briefing about this secret location. It was a historical site of some sort, on the verge of being owned by some other corp. Jared and I are sort of fill-in-the-gap guys for the team. I know weapons, radio systems, and other miscellaneous things. Jared is our resident Latin expert, and had a bit of tech knowledge of his own. Riley is our dedicated tech, though. Allison is our pilot, brawn, and leader. I like all of them. I've been on ops with Jared before, but not the others before this. Riley was nice enough, and Allison didn't care much if we called her sir, ma'am, or any of that. "Just Allison," she said. "And if you were smart, you'd just throw that drive away. He's always been crazy," she said when I asked her about Miles. Apparently he was one of Allison's uncles, a raven by all accounts. I don't know why, but I still held on to the flash drive. HQ was quite serious about this job, as they had given us some pretty high-tech stuff. The biggest among these were the suits we were fitted into. They were the real sci-fi sort of thing, full body suits with all sorts of functions. They had flashlights, comms, night vision, additional strength, and the ability to support us underwater in pressurized places. That's just some of it though. The suits had a sort of fail-safe too, that if enough of their onboard battery was used, they'd shut all unnecessaries off to give us an hour of life support. Now about the briefing. Apparently at some point back in Roman times there were groups, cults really, that fled into caves to create offshoot civilizations. No one knows whether these people were actual Romans or not, or why they fled. They thought that they would be safe from something if they had built their towns down there. That's right. Underground, underwater cave cities. We all just simply assumed that they were flooded later on by earthly shifting. The cave systems had been dated back to Roman times through archaeological and anthropological evidence. A spelunker and cave diver, David Werner, had found the cave and sparked HQ's interest with it. Once they discovered it was some sort of unique, underwater area, this person ready to dive with a team. They were quite surprised at what they found down there and took pictures of the sprawling underground city. It has one central feature, a temple of sorts, painted with ancient murals and Latin phrases. Who knows how all of this survived erosion, but it was there. In fact, the temple was a sort of air pocket where the water did not reach. The divers had taken several photos and resurfaced. HQ's top scientists were worried that it would be some sort of branch language, but it turned out to be traditional Latin in these murals, just fanciful script that might take a minute to read. The anthropology department also suggested that these images have ties to different cultish behaviors around the world, but more research is required, hence our explorations. The caves had been put on the back burner for some time, until recently, when they were outbid to renew rights on the land or something. I'm not sure how any of that works. All I know is that HQ wants to be the first to discover the most obvious aspects before they lose control of it. Our squad would be some of the first to walk there since ancient times. Groups have been sent around the area to investigate though, mainly asking the surrounding locals at the chance of legends about this place. Some locals did have stories. Old ones that had a strange air around them when they're told. If a local heard whispers of these stories being told to our agents, they would leave, as if they'd catch bad luck. It was hard enough to find anyone willing to tell us about them in the first place. The boil down of these tales went something like this. Don't go into the ancient cities. Don't take anything. Don't wish for anything. The first names of the firstborns. Otherwise, it will only be death below. The silken blood from the first names of the firstborns and yada yada. They liked those phrases a lot, and one in particular, death below. The locals admitted that they didn't really know what the stories meant, as several cities had been found and looted to no consequences long ago. Of course, in this field, it's not uncommon for these warnings to pop up, and despite these, HQ sent us out, the first recovery squad to fully capture the ruins, to gather as many artifacts, videos, and images as possible. When the executive had shown us what current evidence was available, he also told us about the cave diver's advice. Don't go down there. The caves are inhabited by something. Don't go into the citadel. He had us reference an image he had taken in the ruins proper. There were blips in the dark that almost could seem like eyes, or a figure, maybe. These were what had started the rumors when some of the evidence leaked, that there's something down there. That cave diver had said other things, but I had just ignored them at the time. Things about how there were small tunnels in the walls that the figure could use to chase him outside. Nonsense, I thought. We need you to go into the caves and recover the artifacts shown here. Take more clear pictures and video of the murals and upload them to us through our high-depth connection systems, the executive had said. We did what we were told, and here we are. I still have a bad feeling about all of this, Jared said as we flew on the plane. We'll be fine. This was Riley. We've been fine all of the other times. Egypt, Mexico, you name it. I don't know, something just seems off about this one is all. I don't like the stories about something hiding in the caves. What if it's waiting for us? Well, next time we go into a pyramid, I'll pack some bug spray for the locusts, "Come on, Jared," I said. Allison looked over the pilot seat. "Quiet down back there. We're going to land soon." I tucked the flash drive away. Whatever it had on it, it could wait until the ride home. When the plane landed, we then drove across the Italian countryside. There wasn't much time to enjoy the colorful sights. We made it to the area that afternoon. There were security teams at the borders who let us in, private property signs staked throughout. They drove us up the mountain to the baseline before we had to hike the rest of the way. It was quite a trip to make it there, moving through the heavy foliage and steep mountains. But in the end, we made it. The mouth of the cave was not so obvious. If it wasn't for the map and pictures HQ had given us, we might not have found it for hours. We had to shimmy into the cave one by one, then climb down a cliff inside that descended into the mountain itself. It seemed ancient stairs had been carved here, pathways too, but they had long since collapsed or eroded. "Headcam still on?" Allison asked. She gained an affirmative from all of us. She was about to say something else when there was some kind of loud rumble suddenly from above. If it wasn't for our full helmets with local comms installed, we may not have heard Allison's warning. "Small cave-in, move to the left side here, quickly." As she said it, a few hand-sized stones crumbled from the cliff. It took a moment for the dust to settle so that we could see. It seemed the entrance itself had sealed somehow. "What the hell?" I muttered. "What caused that? Did anyone feel an earthquake or something?" There had been a sort of rumble, now that I thought about it. It didn't seem to be earthquake material, though. "Nothing for me," Riley said, checking a reader on her wrist. "Well, that's exactly why we bring the power drills. Are they ready to go?" Allison asked. Riley pulled her back from her shoulder and looked inside. She unfolded the high-tech drill, and it flashed a red light. "Dead." "Damn it, Jared. Why isn't the drill charged?" Jared went to rub the back of his neck, but was blocked by his suit. "Yeah, sorry about that." "And that is exactly why we bring generators," Riley said. "Come on then, let's get moving. We can charge the drill at camp when we dip our toes in," Allison said. Caves were just as creepy as they looked in the few pictures. Weirder, even. Almost like something alive was petrified. The tunnels deeper in were tall and round, as if burrowed out by some giant worm long ago. Several smaller holes and tunnels covered the walls in a strange pattern. I'm no geologist, but it looked perhaps volcanic. Sometimes the cave ceilings were just tall enough we couldn't see them with our helmet lights. Some sections had almost Egyptian-like carvings and story murals too. Even though these high-tech suits were protecting us from the underground pressure, I could feel it like eyes on my back. After an hour's walk or so, we were deep enough to start feeling anxious about the whole thing. I didn't have time to feel the jet lag either. We found a flat area and set up our base. I was calibrating some diving equipment there, as everybody else went about their own business. The folding tech drill was charging beside us. We had quite the loadout. Rifles and ammunition, tech like HDCs, suit repair products, generators, sleeping areas, diving gear, and rations. HQ sure was serious about this. None of my equipment was cooperating much, though. The HDC in particular, high-depth connection, beeped at me with some kind of repeating error. "Hey Jared, got any ideas what's going on here?" I gestured at the equipment, the calibration giving me chaotic feedback to my headset. I would have called on Riley, but her and Allison were busy away from camp, where the water started. "I don't think that's gonna work again. There ain't much signal down here." Damn it. I smacked the radio as it buzzed louder. "Let's just turn that thing off. Save our generator power," Jared said. There's no way we're connecting to home base again. HQ had sent the radio was good for deep cavern travel up to 2 miles, hence its name. And we weren't that far under. They said it was necessary that we keep communication open at all times, upload the pictures and so on. Well, it seems that they had screwed up. Our proximity helmet comms worked, and our long-distance radios, just not our deep cavern connection to HQ. I clicked off the switch and pulled the cords from the generators. Jared glanced off to the side, and then I heard it, footsteps creeping up to camp. So, Allison began, walking into sight. You get that connection working yet? No, Jared and I said together. Not down here past the gates of hell, Jared said. Where's Riley? Didn't you assign yourself to her today? I asked. She's still off setting up lights at the water. We've been down there for a while, but she said it would take a few hours at least. I just came back to get a few adapters for her. I don't know how she stands it, being down there all alone, Jared said. She really shouldn't be down there alone, right? Isn't that against protocol, boss? Why didn't you just radio us? I said. She glanced down at the radio I had been working on. Well, it doesn't seem to be in working order, does it? I held her eye and tapped the radio on my shoulder. All of ours gave a fuzzy click of reception. Hey, asshole, these ones still work, I said. Careful what you say to your superior, Allison growled. A moment later, we heard Riley. Delta 2 here. No messing around on official channels, please, Delta 4. Glad you got the radios working. Where's our beloved leader, Delta 1? I need those adapters. Over. Delta 4 here. Thank you for the advice and well wishes, Delta 2. The prodigal leader is on her way. Over and out. Should we really keep leaving Riley? I'm worried about the stories. Everyone thinks we're crazy for taking this job, Jared said. Oh, relax, Jared, I teased. Don't tell me you're still going on about it. Jared shrugged, glancing behind himself. We both saw the same pictures, right? I only believe what seems reasonable. Those weird murals and buildings down here don't seem right. Not to mention that thing in the last image. That diver saw things down here, Alex. Things that use those wall holes as tunnels to get around you. As long as we follow protocol, we'll be fine, I said. Protocol? You mean like communication with the surface or bust? Jared said. What, are you saying you want to abandon the whole mission? Leave this pay to somebody else? Allison interrupted us. Boys, enough. You're like kids sometimes, I swear to God. My babysitting days are over. That's in order. Silence followed Allison's words. Me messing with the last preparations while Jared glared at me. Then there was a sound. The three of us looked towards it. It had come from deeper in the cavern, it seemed, though it was hard to tell. A distant crash followed a moment later. Tell me you heard that, Jared said. I clicked comms. Riley, you there? Over. We waited for Riley to answer. When we were just about to give up, a garbled version of her voice chimed something unintelligible. There was also a strange residue in the background noise, sort of soft whir, some malfunction maybe. She's probably just out of range, so let's go help her out, Allison said. You're the one that should be over there anyway, I mumbled. Allison's smile was sarcastic, clear even through her helmet visor. Great. I'm glad you're so eager, Alex. Please, why don't you go on ahead? It seems that you've got a break from this equipment for now. Some leader you are, I mumbled. Well, the choices are a bit limited, aren't they? For instance, you couldn't lead a balloon by the string. By the way, she needs these adapters. Allison said.
Don't look at me. I freely admit that I'm scared,
Jared said. I sighed.
Fine. I just hope you know you're a bundle of dicks.
I stood up and gathered some of my gear and the adapters. I kept the flash drive in a waterproof pocket. I don't know why, really. It was probably the best intuition I had that day, though. I grabbed my scanner, cameras, a more powerful flashlight, my diving gear backpack, and a weapon. This was when Allison chimed in again.
I thought you weren't scared of anything. Why don't you leave that behind?
I guess I had caught her in the wrong mood that day.
I can go with you if you're scared. It is protocol after all to have a buddy,
Jared teased.
Fine.
Put my rifle down.
You giddy little assholes stay here then. I'm gonna bring some of this other stuff to get captures while I'm down there, like protocol demands.
And I headed off into the seemingly endless caverns. I studied the cave walls as I walked. I hadn't been able to understand their vast size until I had been sent there myself. I thought about the stories as I went. The drifting figure that the diver had said climbed in the walls, and the origin of these ruins. The picture showed the sprawling city in chaotic design. Carved stones and pyramids laid out underground in townships. Though the obvious reason for exploring these places was for historic documentation, something had always seemed off to me, happy as Jared would be to hear it later. I wasn't a treasurer for HQ, but we all knew what kinds of millions must search through the company's accounts. There was something here that someone rich was looking for, and we were the stick they were poking the hive with. The sound of my footsteps seemed to offend the silence. I was starting to feel naked without my rifle despite myself. Questions did arise in me then, like, why do we need weapons at all? Why force us to establish life comms? The stories of a figure crawling on the walls, traveling through the countless holes, was not a welcome companion. At least the pay would be good. Was good. I eventually made it to where I could see Riley's floodlight set up and hear the soft whir of the generators. Seems this is what her and Allison had been doing all this time. Several lights were mounted near a mouth leading into the water. Some lights hadn't quite been set up yet, and others simply weren't plugged in. I could see the distant structures through the glass-like surface. Shadows of old bones long submerged. It was the city, a shadow of it. Though parts of the water were clear, it was hard to make out by a churning mess of silt that covered most of this surface. Riley's no amateur. She wouldn't have brushed the floor and disturbed the silt like that on her own. It made me uneasy. This place was so large, even Riley's 600,000 lumens beaming through the water or so couldn't reach it all. It helped a considerable amount though, despite the silt.
Hello? Riley?
I radioed out. The area was empty. My words would have echoed without my helmet. Despite that, I thought that I could almost hear an echo. My eyes had adjusted to the lights, and I saw one of them was knocked over. It looked like it had been dragged partly down, into the water, leading into the mouth. There were rows of diving gear that we would have to put on, adding to our suits to be able to dive down here. Strangely though, there were no missing sets. I hadn't thought much of it at the time for some reason, though I should have seen it as a sign. I could see another one of the lights farther into the ruins. In the middle of the paved streets, in fact, illuminating buildings inside as it flickered. I clicked the long-distance radio.
Riley? You here or what?
There was no answer, besides that strange echo from the radio. Not even Jared or Allison chimed in. Then there was that strange audio residue. Though this time, it was when I had clicked on the radio. I set my headlamp to max brightness. That might burn through my suit battery, but I needed it. I thought about going back to Jared and Allison. I didn't. I should have. I unpacked my diving gear bag, attached the necessary components to my suit, and readied myself to set off into the water.
Here goes nothing,
I said, and dove in. There was a slight hill that led down into the city. The air seemed to thrum beyond the water pressure now on me. I swam across the infinity of darkness, and soon made it to the light dragged down into the road. I paddled just above it. Seeing it clearer now, it had long marks across the metal, so it really had been dragged all the way here. The light itself was on its side, aimed towards the central building of town, the so-called Citadel. Its shadow flickered with the light. I looked up at this building. It was an almost Mayan-looking temple, though I didn't study it long when I saw the figure paddling at the top of the stairs there. No, they were actually just standing there normally, as if there wasn't any water at all. I should have realized something was up.
Riley?
I said over the radio.
It's me, Alex.
Alex, it's me. Help.
She said back. It was odd. The voice almost didn't seem to come from the figure on the steps. But where else could it have come from? My heart was racing, but I just assumed it was from relief. I swam down the street and towards the center. It was far enough to take me a few minutes to get there. As I came closer, I felt a further sinking in my chest. I knew something was telling me to paddle away as fast as I could, but I ignored it. Riley had waited on the steps for me, I thought. But when I made it to the top of the stone overlook, no one was there. Just like the diver had said, the central part of this cathedral was a sort of air bubble. I had to swim through a small tunnel that led down into the surfaced area of the mural chamber, where they had seen in the pictures.
Riley?
Then I saw the blood. I followed the trail. I pulled out my boot knife. It was all I had. The sheer size of this place was intimidating in person. I didn't have long to admire the murals. On the wall, there were 9 8-sided crosses, lined up in tandem with symbols above each. A group of 4 and a group of 5. Strung up on the 5 were bodies, long dried blood trailing down the crosses. Their arms and legs. They were split down the center to fill all 8 branches of the crosses. I didn't recognize any of these people, but they were long dead, and all wore agents' uniforms like ours. What did this mean? Then I saw Riley, hung in the second group, second from the right. She was still whole, luckily, and called out to me.
Alex, help me.
I ran up and climbed a podium that led to the crosses. It was bad. Riley was hung by ropes around her wrists and shoulders. It was clear something had attacked, damaging the softer parts of her armor. She had sort of claw-like marks across her legs and side. I tried to untie her bonds.
What happened?
I asked. My radio was on the fritz again with that strange residue.
I was setting up the lights. Something grabbed me and attacked. It pulled me and a light all the way down here, slashing us both. I would have drowned without my helmet. Didn't have any diving gear on. I tried to run, but it hung me here. I think it's still.
Riley's words trailed off. She looked up as my radio crackled louder than ever. I had only been able to free Riley's left shoulder, then stopped. something dark dribbled onto my forehead from above. It was old, viscous blood. I looked up too. A dark silhouette smiled at me. A long, scaly smile with bright eyes. It spoke in a ragged and slow tone as if the speech was unfamiliar.
My work.
Stay tuned for part 2. Thank you for listening to Whisperwood Stories. If you enjoyed, don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe down below. Do you have a story that you'd like me to read here? Consider commenting or sending it to whisperwoodsubmissions@gmail.com. I hope you were enjoying this story written by me, Whisper Woods. Don't let the shadows get too close.